Everyone has their own idea and definition of adventure. Mine is simple: adventure by bike. I've always been a firm believer in having an outlet in life, a way to escape and break up the monotony of the daily grind. My escape has always been the bicycle. Whether in the woods or on the road, pedaling along allows me to free my mind and gives me a sense of freedom, a sense of adventure. Tomorrow morning, my buddy Adam and I will be renting a car, hitting the road, and driving to Pittsburgh, PA. Here, we will pick up the Great Allegheny Passage, a rails to trails conversion that'll lead us back to our homes in Kensington, Maryland. I've always been intrigued by the idea of bike touring, allowing you to slow down and take it all in. When Adam threw out the idea of riding the Allegheny Passage, I jumped all over it. The trip has been in the works for months, and now the time has finally come. Over the next week, we will average 60 miles a day, setting up camp along the way. It will be an interesting experience, as neither Adam nor I have done anything like this before. Both of us are avid cyclists, but this trip will be a whole new cycling experience. Not only will we be covering 350 miles, but doing so with our bikes packed with 30 extra pounds of gear. I plan to document the adventure along the way and look forward to sharing our experiences with you. Let the adventure begin. Morning of day one started off early. I enjoyed my last good cup of coffee for the week and was out the door. We had packed up the car the night before so we could get an early jump on the road. Adam was at my place in Kensington at 5 a.m. We made great time and pulled into Pittsburgh right at 9:30, dropped off the rental, packed up our bikes, and were on the way. It was a refreshing feeling, leaving the car behind and becoming our own self-contained vehicle. The bike is a simple yet amazing machine, and it would be our sole transportation for the week. A week of living the simple life. A week of total freedom from what society considers normal. And a week I had been looking forward to for a long time. The weather did not look great, a bit overcast and some drizzle, but we were excited and ready to go. We cruised through the city, zipping along until we had our first encounter with the train. Little did we know, the sound of trains would prevent us from getting solid sleep all week. Eventually, we made our way from the busy city streets and into the woods. No sooner were we in the woods did the rain pick up. We stopped, threw on rain gear, but weren't about to let a little rain dampen our spirits. The rain did not bother me. We were both well prepared and had expected to encounter bad weather. Riding through the rain made me feel a bit more hardcore and was all part of the overall experience. We pushed through and ended up stopping for lunch in West Newton, 35 miles into day one. A bit wet, but still psyched about the adventure ahead. After chowing down on some pizza, we pedaled on. Our destination for night one was Connellsville. After 60 miles in the saddle, we were happy to get off the bikes for the evening. We had made great time and felt really good about the first day's ride. We had first pick of 2 shelters as we were the only 2 around, for now. After getting out of our wet clothes, we set up camp. Before too long, a gentleman towing a trailer pulled in. He was taking his time and doing the same ride we did in twice the amount of time. He was friendly, overly friendly. The next morning, we woke early to the sounds of more trains. Neither of us had a good night's sleep, but made coffee and had breakfast. We took some time to clean and lube our bikes as they were filthy, covered in grit and grime from riding in the rain the day before. next morning started off with some much appreciated sunshine and some high and scenic bridge crossings. While riding, conversation was minimal, falling into our own rhythm, simply focusing on pedaling and breathing while taking in the beauty around us. It's hard for me to explain where my mind goes while riding, but I find that riding is the only way for me to find this place. This place allows my mind to be clear and for my worries to disappear. Day 2, a mere 45 miles, was the shortest of the trip. It was broken up with a lunch stop in Ohio Pile, home of Frank Lloyd Wright's house, Falling Water. We met a couple at lunch that told us we should check out Cucumber Falls. Both of us were disappointed and could have done without the 4-mile detour. The climb there didn't justify the view. After the disappointment, we pushed on to our destination for the evening, Rockwood.
At the end of day 2, Rockwood, right ahead of me. It's been a long day. Feels like most of the riding's been uphill, but we made it. We'll hang out, get some dinner, and hopefully feel good in the morning. Alright.
At the trailhead, we talked to a nice lady who told us about Husky Haven campsite and a good place to get dinner. We could not have been any happier with the facilities at Husky Haven. $10 got us a hot shower, a place to charge our batteries, firewood, and even a bike wash, which we took full advantage of. The campsite was a short ride away from the facilities, and once set up for the evening, we went out and enjoyed dinner. After eating a much-deserved meal, we grabbed a 6-pack to go. The bartender asked if we wanted ice, and immediately, both of us thought of icing our sore bodies. Not exactly what she had intended the ice for, but this started a nightly routine. At this point in the trip, both of us were feeling a bit sore, but not nearly as bad as I had expected to feel. That night, we sat around the fire, sipping on cold beer and passing the bag of ice back and forth until it was completely melted. Another sleep-deprived night thanks to the train, but woke feeling surprisingly good. Adam, not satisfied with the coffee I had ground, spent the morning crushing coffee beans to his liking. We enjoyed coffee and an early morning fire to get things started, then pushed off for day 3 in the saddle. We knew today was going to be a good day. It was the day we reached the Continental Divide. The divide marked the highest point in elevation for the week's ride. This meant we could finally enjoy some downhill and a faster pace. Between the divide and us were a few more spectacular viaduct crossings, one being the Salisbury Viaduct, spanning nearly 2,000 feet over the Castleman River Valley. It was the longest bridge on the railroad system, but was abandoned in 1975 when the mines dried up. Now renovated, it's a sight to see. It just seemed to go on and on. The views were fantastic. The second viaduct crossing was a Keystone Viaduct. It wasn't nearly as long, but had some really interesting steelwork and still produced some excellent views. Windmills could be seen atop Allegheny Mountain. We were both feeling a bit rough at this point, but the thought of reaching the divide kept us going. In the distance, we could see what we thought was just another tunnel, but as we approached, we were able to make out the letters above. Could not have come at a better time. Instantly lifting our spirits, we raced forward, excited about the milestone and ready to get off the bikes for a few. Ahead of us was a group taking pictures. We blew through just the other side of the tunnel. "Aren't you gonna stop?" they yelled. Of course we stopped and talked a bit and then took some pictures of our own. We were actually anxious to get riding, knowing we had some fun cruising ahead of us. It was a nice change to have the wind in our face, cruising with such little effort while barely breaking a sweat. Before the excitement of the divide could even wear off, we reached another Allegheny highlight, the Big Savage Tunnel. It's 3,200 feet of pure, dark exhilaration. We must have been rolling over 20, only catching a glimpse of things as we sped by the sparse lighting. Once out of the tunnel, we were greeted by a magnificent view. Unfortunately, the leaves had just begun to change. The rest of the day flew by. Plans were to stop in Frostburg for lunch, but once in town, we saw signs for Cumberland. Cumberland was supposed to be our destination for the evening. As the saying goes, time flies when you're having fun. Feeling great, we got some dinner and pushed on a bit to Spring Gap. Cumberland marks the end of the Allegheny Passage and the start of the C&O Canal. We had read that the trail became a bit more unforgiving, and that was no doubt the case. Conditions rapidly deteriorated and our pace slowed. It's the difference between trails made by modern machines as opposed to ones cut into the landscape by mules and horses. The government had been shut down since well before we left for the trip, so all the porta potties were banded shut and the drinking water well handles had been removed. We weren't really supposed to be camping at the site, but weren't too worried about it. We had the entire place to ourselves. That night, we had the best sleep of the week. I had only been up for a few minutes when the park police drove in. He rolls down his window and says, "Morning, in case you guys didn't know, the parks are now open." We smiled, waved, and said thanks, and he was on his way. We had to forego making coffee as we were low on water, but enjoyed breakfast and knew the next town was only 10 miles away where we could fill our bottles. We made it to the next town and found our way to the schoolhouse kitchen. It was an old school that still had a working cafeteria. Here we found some really nice people who filled our bottles and gave us a cup of coffee. We didn't stay long, and as we walked back out to the bikes, the rain began to fall. With our bottles full and warm coffee in our bellies, we pushed on and rode through the Paw Paw Tunnel. The Paw Paw Tunnel is pitch black and super narrow. It was the only time I had used my headlight the entire trip. On the other side of the tunnel was a wooden boardwalk and steep steps leading to the top of the tunnel exit. We took a break and enjoyed the view from atop the tunnel. Our next stop for the evening was Hancock, Maryland, but before we reached our resting point, we had our only mechanical issue. As we were crossing a roadway, Adam blew out the sidewall on his rear tire, but after a quick repair, we were back rolling again. At this point, we were soaked from the rain and lack of time to dry our gear. As we came around a bend, I could see a neon light glowing in the distance. It was a wonderful sight. The open sign was our home for the night, C&O Cycles in Hancock, Maryland. The bike shop had a bunk set up out back that catered to people riding the trail. It was not for everyone, but we were happy to have a roof over our heads as more rain was in the forecast. On the way to Hancock, I thought it'd be wonderful to do a load of laundry and get our nasty wet gear clean. We asked the owner of the shop if there was a laundromat nearby, and to our surprise, there was. We did a load of laundry, picked up some groceries, and washed our bikes as we waited. That night, two younger guys showed up looking for a place to crash. We let them in the gate and chatted for a while before we went down for the evening. Between the hard, narrow wooden bunks and cold temps, we had by far the worst sleep of the trip, but woke to clear skies and a sunny forecast. The two we had shared the bunk with that night got an early start and were gone before we even woke up. We took our time getting going, enjoying our staple breakfast of steel oats, peanut butter, and coffee before heading out around 9:30. The rising sun came beaming through the trees. Between the sunshine and our clean, dry gear, we felt great. We took a break at one of the old locks along the canal. As we rode along, I thought about the past, to the days when the canal was in use, and loved how well the remains had been preserved. As we rounded a corner of a steep rock outcropping, we came to Dam 5, one of the original 6 dams built by the canal company. Dam 5 is only one of the 2 dams left. Here, We caught up with the boys we had shared the bunkhouse with the night before. It gave us a great deal of satisfaction catching up with them, as they had a 2-hour jump on us that morning. We stopped and chatted for a bit. Come to find out, they had taken the 10-mile paved path from Hancock. Both Adam and I had seen the path, but felt like it would have been cheating. Instead, we stuck to the bumpy, unpaved dirt canal. We didn't stay long, as the day had just begun. We rode off and never crossed paths with them again. One of my favorite spots of the trip was Big Slackwater. This area was recently renovated after flooding closed the trail in 1996. Reopened in October of 2012, this 2.5-mile stretch of fast-rolling concrete hugged the riverbank. The lack of railing and minimal curbing allowed for outstanding views of the river and gave me the sense of hovering along the top of the water. We were making great time and found ourselves pulling into Harper's Ferry before we knew it. We decided to stop and get some dinner, but in order to get to the downtown area, we had to carry our 60-pound bikes and gear up a steep spiraling staircase that led to the bridge above. We walked across the bridge and found a spot where we could keep an eye on the bikes as we had dinner. We were getting cold and feeling tired, but were told about Brunswick campsite that was just a few miles away. Here, we got a hot shower, set up for the evening, and made a fire. The temps were starting to dip, and we knew it would be a cold night. We sat around the fire for the last time and talked about our experience over the past several days. We had snagged a few tea bags from dinner in town and enjoyed a nightcap of hot tea and whiskey. We woke early as we were both freezing. I was happy that it'd be my last night sleeping around Trains and Adam, whose snoring drowned out Trains at times. I had known about his snoring, and earplugs were one of the essentials in my bag. That morning, we built a fire, and we both huddled around to warm up a bit. We packed up and were off on our final stretch of the trip. I had mixed feelings. I wanted to get home, but was still enjoying myself and didn't want the adventure to end. Adam, on the other hand, was determined to get home. He kept mentioning wanting to sit on his couch, and I think the idea of a soft, comfy couch did him in. It was a chilly morning ride, but got to White's Ferry rather quickly. We both felt like we were almost home. We took our time, taking frequent stops and stretching our legs, as neither of us had eaten enough that morning and the effects were starting to set in. It was obvious we were getting closer to Great Falls, as lots of other people were out enjoying their own Saturday morning. For us, it was annoying. No one was paying attention, and we came close to running a few people over. After ringing my bell 200 times or so, we made it through the maze of people and could finally see the streets of Georgetown. We had gone this far and could have easily jumped off the canal and ridden home, but were determined to complete the entire length of the trail. We made our way to lock number 1, the start of the canal and the 335-mile mark. We were ecstatic to have completed the entire journey in the exact time frame we had planned for. Now we had the 15-mile trek back to Kensington along the Capitol Crescent Trail. It was the hardest 15 miles of the trip, but we made it home, rounding out our adventure of 6 days, 5 nights, and 350 miles. The overall trip was a great success. We both thoroughly enjoyed it and were very happy we had made the time for such an amazing opportunity. It's refreshing to live the simple life and escape what is considered normal, No phones, no cars, no need to check the time. Just enjoying life. The riding was only part of the challenge. Dealing with the elements, packing and carrying the proper gear, setting up camp every night, and the mental aspect of waking up every morning knowing we had another 60 plus miles to cover was also a test. We both agreed we had done a pretty good job preparing for the trip and bringing just the right amount of gear. We both wish we could have been a bit warmer at night, but other than that, we felt like everything else was covered. Neither of us had anything like this before, so we learned as we went. It was interesting to me to see our differences in sleeping situation as well as choice of bikes. Adam chose to sleep in a hammock, which I thought would be problematic for his back, but he was comfortable despite being a bit cold at night. I went with the conventional tent, pad, and sleeping bag, and was comfortable with my choice. Adam rode his Trek Paragon 29er outfitted with a rear rack. He replaced his mountain tires for a smoother rolling 38 cm tire and added bar ends, which allowed for more hand positions. He also had the added comfort of a front fork to help soak up the bumpy C&O Canal. After our lunch stop in West Newton, he had fashioned a front fender from a Gatorade bottle. He was having trouble distinguishing rain from tire spray. The makeshift fender did its job for the remainder of the trip. I rode my Salsavia and ran 35 cm tires and fenders. The fenders were a lifesaver. They kept my bike, my gear, and me much drier than my buddy Adam. I was extremely happy and comfortable with my bike for the entire ride. It's a long time to spend with another individual where the mental and physical strain could have easily caused issues, but we had zero arguments and enjoyed each other's company. My experience was amazing, and I loved every minute of it. For me, the thought of hanging out every night and setting up camp broke up the long day's ride. I would highly recommend this ride to anyone. The overall riding is easy, and the trip can be broken up in any number of ways depending on time. You have the choice of camping or staying in a hotel if that better suits you. I guarantee anyone looking for an inexpensive, scenic adventure would no doubt enjoy themselves.